Hey everyone, welcome to the Entry Point Hunting Podcast. I am your host, Justina Lee Stoltz, the only podcasting host that admits that she doesn't know what she's talking about, but that's why I bring you the experts to give you that information. And today I am very excited to have Dylan Eyers on the podcast. For Dylan, he is the creator, founder, innovator of EatWild, and hunting has always been about two things for him: creating a community around food and connecting with nature. It's a philosophy he picked up from a long line of hunters, and it's one that he's proud to pass on to new generations. With a growing interest in learning to hunt from folks from non traditional hunting communities, there is a gap in mentorship and support for this growing community. Dylan established EatWild in 2011 to support non traditional hunters to find their way to becoming ethical, safe, and successful hunters. Dylan says the most challenging thing is getting out in the wilderness and getting the skills and confidence you need to figure out how the animals live and how to harvest them. Developing those skills can take years, but it's always worth it in the end. Dylan shares his knowledge and passion for hunting through his field workshops with Learn to Hunt online courses and YouTube videos and the Eat Wild podcast. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome Dylan to the show today. How's it going?
That's great, and I really love the professional intro. And you're 11 episodes into this, and like I'm already feeling like I got to step up my game on the Wild podcast. So well done.
Thank you, thank you. I'm an enthusiast. I tend to dive hard into things that I am passionate and interested in, which was exactly how I ended up getting into hunting too. Is something I stumbled across and then decided, yep, I'm going to go all in for this. And I just happened to have some podcasting equipment around from another project that I had bounced into at one point. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Cool.
So start off us off a little bit, telling us a bit more about your journey and your background. My understanding is that you come from a hunting family, but that hunting wasn't always the most natural thing for you, and it took a little while for you to get into it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we grew up in a hunting family, so where I remember there was always like in hunting season there'd be some animal hanging in our basement or in the shed out back, and we had big family butchering parties. So as a kid, like I gravitated to the meat and food part about it ever since I can
Mm,
remember being a kid. Like I was always running meat through the grinder for probably from the age of 2 or 3 years old.
yeah.
um but the killing part was a difficult for me.
Mm.
Like I always had we go hunting as a family, and like I'd be kind of if I heard the gun go off up on the hill, I knew something had died, and
Yeah.
that was perplexing for a young person.
Yeah.
But at some point, like it all comes together, and at some point around 12 years old, I kind of got it, and I kind of got excited about when the gun went off. It meant that there was something exciting and something really good had happened in terms of the for our
Yeah.
family.
So what was the flipping point then? Like what changed from up to 12, and then at 12, what made it more exciting versus something that was a little bit more trepidatious?
You know, there was probably like I remember chasing around quails on the Okanagan, and
Mhm.
it was sort of like, for a long time, I remember seeing a bird get shot when I was 10, and it was like super traumatic.
Mm.
But it wasn't one that it was a neighborhood kid that had shot this robin with a BB gun, and then I think it
Oh,
killed it. It was terrible.
yeah.
So it was really hard for me to get excited about bird hunting, but it was legal open season. I think my brother and I were chasing around these quails with a 22, and it was kind of fun, and we never got one, but I kinda got into it. I kinda was like, "Oh, this is
Yeah.
exciting," right? So that was
Yeah.
maybe the first sort of, like, understanding the pursuit of an animal, and when it sort of triggers that desire
Mhm.
not desire, but, like, there's just something about it that happens inside you where, like, "Oh, okay, this is exciting. I'm engaged. I want this to work out." I
Mhm.
had that first feeling, but the, I'd go to like, my dad took me to whitetail camp with his crew of friends for a few years, and I think, like, about 11 was my first year, and I just kinda hung around camp and, wasn't really interested in actually hunting. I was just sort of helping out. But when I was 12 or 13, I remember, like, kind of just there's this thing that happens in whitetail camp when every day, there's a group of maybe 10 to 12 hunters that all share a camp together. We
That's a
all
big
wall
camp.
Yeah, it's very organized. So they've got, like,
Yeah.
2 or 3 wall tents. Everybody's got a corner of a wall tent, and wood stoves,
Nice.
and a nice big kitchen area.
Yeah.
Um, and every morning fires get made, coffee served to everybody in their bunks, and then um, and you go about your day from there, and you go off hunting, and then
Yeah.
around noon, most people sort of stroll back into camp around 11 o'clock because they've had their hunt. But if someone's out a little bit later, like at noon or 1 o'clock, like,
Mm.
when the vehicle drives up the driveway to the camp, everybody kind of
It's
perks
going,
up and is
"Woo."
like,
Yeah.
"Oh, interesting. Are they gonna back up to the meat pole? And like, what's happening?" Right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of got it like as a kid, I was I like whenever something someone would back out of the meat pole, everybody gets excited. They all wander out from camp and they wander over to the meat pole. They look at the back of the truck. Oh, that's a nice buck or whatever. And
Yeah.
and then help. And then the camaraderie of helping get it hung and the story that comes was something that after seeing the reaction from other hunters, which were mentors of mine and people I really connected with, I kind of was like, I wanted to have that experience. I wanted
Yeah.
to go and come back with a deer. And
Yeah.
that was kind of the thing that really, drove me to kind of get over my fear of killing an animal
Mm.
or the drive to actually like, because up till then I did a lot of wandering around the woods and
Yeah.
looking at deer with a gun, and I just was like couldn't kind of get it together to shoot one,
Yeah.
nor did I have it in me to shoot one. So it was kind of
Yeah.
that kind of feeling came over me, and the next day yeah, I had a successful hunt the next day, which was
Nice. That's amazing. Yeah. The last couple years I've been fortunate to get invited to one of my buddies, his family deer camp, him, his brother, and his dad, and then often the random friends that come along with it. And I totally can relate to that feeling of camaraderie at the fire at the end of the day or the midday lunch break or whatever. And it's always the first question when you get back. So what do you got? Did you get anything? Or if you're pulling in and somebody wanders out to see if there's anything in the back of the truck kind of thing. So that's definitely one of my fondest memories of hunting so far because I have yet to actually harvest a large game animal, mostly just little birds. But yeah, that camaraderie at camp is second to none.
it's a cool thing. Like I have a couple young hunting friends that are like sons and daughters of
Mm,
of my crew now, and they're sort of in that 12 to 15-year-old range, and it's like the most exciting thing for them when
yeah.
everybody comes drives in, like, they're just,
Yeah.
like, right on you. They're like,
Oh yeah.
checking you out, you got blood on your clothes, you got it in the back, like,
Yeah.
so I wonder what that means. I wonder how come it's so primal that we get excited for when the hunter comes home,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's that community feel of when one person is successful, we're all successful because everyone knows, I mean, if you harvest a deer or a bear or whatever at whatever hunting camp you're at, it's not like you're coming in and you're just keeping it all to yourself. So a success in my mind, a success to one person is a success for everyone at the camp. So maybe that plays into it a little bit. Everyone's looking for fresh meat.
Yeah, I guess I mean, it is the communal aspect. I think that's probably and yeah, and everybody contributes, in one way or another, so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, very exciting. Um, and so once you were into your hunting journey, um, I don't know how long that time period was between then and 2011 when Eat Wild started. But what sort of drove you towards eventually getting to starting Eat Wild?
Well, growing up, so my family, like my grandfather, is Métis from Manitoba and
Yeah.
migrated to BC, to Musqueam territory, post-war, and raised his
Mm,
family, which is my mom, and uh, and they lived a fairly like they grew up on what you would call the west side of Vancouver, I guess.
mhm.
But they still maintained a lot of connection to that traditional way of life, hunting and fishing.
Nice. Yeah.
And my grandpa still trapped and built birch bark canoes, and was still very connected to his way of life that he brought with him as
Cool.
a Métis person. But all that said, like my mom, went to school on the west side and met a boy from North Van, and they got married, and that was my dad,
And then there was you.
and that was me, and I grew up at, like, Marpole, which is, like, pretty west side Vancouver, so,
Yeah.
went to a high school called McGee and a couple others too, and, yeah, so there was just the hunting was not something that was part of that community, so very
Yeah. It's
much I
harder
was
to do in the city.
yeah, and it just wasn't there wasn't a whole pile of hunting families either, right? It wasn't
Yeah.
like so I always felt a little bit like, I was that the big part of our life that was hunting. I thought it was a bit weird that, we only ate moose meat and we only ate
Mm,
salmon.
yeah.
And, you know, I I tell this story sometimes about like, um, I thought we were kind of in like we lived in poverty a little bit because all we ate
Mm.
was like salmon and halibut and moose and
all
venison and
all
like
the glorious rich meats now.
yeah, yeah, and so and I always felt like and I didn't actually realize how rich we were as a family.
Yeah.
Um, as I got older, my dad used to make his form of harm reduction for myself as a teenager was to make really big meals on Friday nights, like moose burgers or deer or like deer spaghetti. But
Mm.
we would welcome the whole McGee rugby team on
Nice. Wow.
On Friday after school, and we had sort of he knew we were going to go out and drink a bunch of beer because we were 16-year-old kids.
Yeah, yeah,
But he felt like the best thing he could do was just make a bunch of pasta for us, and that way we have this
yeah.
solid base to like hopefully not end up passed out in a ditch somewhere.
Yeah,
So
yeah, at least you're not drinking on an empty stomach.
yeah, but I didn't like so what I did like we fed so many kids in our house,
Wow.
like we
That's
fed
cool.
half the rugby team every Friday night and all the other
Yeah,
kids that just maybe didn't, yeah, and it was all because we had this abundance of moose meat or deer meat or whatever,
yeah,
and we had a passion for feeding people else,
yeah,
um, so I didn't realize how rich we were. Anyways, that all said, I never realized that, nobody else hunted and it was a bit of a weird thing. But
yeah.
in the end, as we all kind of, society changed so much in the last it's changed like at least people's relationship to meat in particular has changed a lot in the last 20 years.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and I think people are really asking about where their meat comes from and how they can be more sustainable about their approach and be a little bit more connected to it. And I think if you're having those conversations, eventually you're going to ask yourself if hunting can be part of that equation
Mm,
for you. And that's where EatWild started. So somewhere around 2011, that conversation was happening a lot, and I was having that conversation a lot with people in my community for the first time. So, as I kind of grew out of my high school scene and was in university and in the Vancouver art scene and music scene, there was a lot of people asking that question. And I'd go to
mm.
parties and I'd be at some art gallery, and there I am in the corner, and there's two or three people asking me about how they can learn to hunt, and I'm like, well, this is kind of weird.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's no hope in hell you guys are going to be able to figure this out because you don't
yeah,
have a dad and a Jeff and a Larry and
yeah,
to help you do this. So how
yeah,
how are you going to find your way? And
yeah,
and that's sort of where Eat Wild came from. Is that hey, like there's a strong interest, and I think it's good
yeah,
if more people in the city learn to hunt and more people from outside of sort of what you call a traditional hunting family are
yeah,
hunting, because I think that grows the understanding of the way of life. And I think that's really the key of what we're trying to do at Eat Wild. Is like,
yeah,
how do we get more people that aren't really the normal hunters hunting
yeah.
and talking about it? You
Yeah.
know?
So what was the catalyst? I mean, was it in the corner of an art gallery? You're like, I could this could be a thing, or like what was the catalyst to make you actually take that step? Because what were you doing at that time as a job or a career? And I assume that Eat Wild happened sort of as a side hustle to begin with.
Yeah, it still is a side hustle, and it's been a
Okay.
side
Yeah.
hustle. I'm very, very fortunate to have a career with provincial government as a park manager. I've been
Nice.
doing that for 25 years, and it's kind of it's not something I'm planning on leaving or changing up. I
Yeah.
just got to find a way to do both, and it's been kind of great to be able to do that. But I did have like back in the I don't know, 2007, I don't know what it would have been like leading up to there was sort of a movement in both the government space and in the hunting space to like recruit more hunters. We'd seen a significant drop
Really
off in hunters. And
interesting.
yeah, sort of post initial implementation of firearms laws and regulations, plus there's an aging out of that original sort of
Mm,
pre-baby boomer hunter community.
yeah.
um, and there was a real drop off. So we went from like 110,000, 120,000 hunters, I think, in BC down to like 70 or 80,000
Oh
around that
wow.
time. So there was sort of this acknowledgement that, hey, like it's kind of important that we have hunters out there for both the revenue that comes with hunters as well as sort of justifying the existence of the fish and wildlife programs and such from a government
Hmm.
perspective. So there was
So there was
this,
actually a push from government to encourage hunters to get licensed and such.
yeah, there was. It's well, it's a very, very small little. So when I was working on a program called the BC Conservation Corps at the time, which was like a how to bring university students into government to help mentor with park rangers, conservation officers, and wildlife biologists.
Mm,
And we would come up with projects. How could you put these young folks to work in a project capacity? So like trail crews for parks, people doing outreach and education for the CO service, people doing accessible data collection for biologists. Those are the types of
Mm.
projects. And one of the
More
project,
volunteer-based stuff?
yeah, volunteer based stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Well, no, these were paid jobs. These were paid,
Oh,
like they're
okay.
just like summer jobs basically
Yeah.
for youth crews, basically. And one of the things we talked about as a group was like, well, and something that was coming forward from the Fish and Wildlife branch at the time was like, hey, like how do we get education out there around you know people learning how to hunt, and how do we recruit folks? So one of the projects that a buddy of mine back at the time that was running the program, we were like, what about if we like market hunting to like people at oh gosh, I'm just at the farmers markets, or at
Mm,
like, or at Whole Foods, or like places where people are really interested in where their food comes out. Like, could we have a
yeah.
pamphlet that says, "Hey, hunting can be for you," like,
Yeah.
or like put people out there at a farmers market in a booth saying, "Hey, would you be
Yeah.
interested in learning more about how to hunt?" And
Yeah.
a way of sourcing your food, and then try to reduce some of those barriers and talk about it, right? So
Yeah.
so we actually had a bunch of funding lined up, and we had BC Wildlife Federation was a partner in this project, and and it was kind of a go for at one point. I was like, "This is amazing. This is gonna go. We got like
Yeah,
60
that's pretty
grand. We got a
incredible.
crew of youth going out there talking about hunting, and we got a curriculum to put forward." But then, yes, as you know, politics is the thing, and an election got called at the time,
Mm.
and so like as soon as that happened, I was like, "Oh, I don't think we're gonna go out and recruit hunters,
You're like, "Wah,
6
wah,
months."
wah."
Yeah, totally. But I mean, I think inside of government, there's definitely an understanding of how important hunters are. Obviously, there's
Interesting.
the politics around hunting is complex, and I
Mhm.
think that you have to acknowledge that as well when you're in the inside. But there
Yeah.
was interest, and at the time, there was a lot of interest. So, and making that connection. So, Eat Wild kind of was like, yeah, we ended up naming the program. It was like a not externally named it, but we called it Hunting for Hippies. So when it reached hippies about like folks that
Yeah.
were like we were kind of keen on this stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And like reach out to like the backcountry ski community, be like, hey, you guys are out here
Mm.
already, skiing and being in the
Yeah.
wilderness. Like, just what about taking
Put
those
a
skills?
gun on your back, yeah.
Well, kind of, because and there we are, like 3 years later, like, there was this wave of people who were coming from
Interesting.
the backcountry ski community, or the backcountry hunting community, or the organic food movement community, and they're
Mm.
all talking hunting, and all of a sudden, we're like, "Oh, wow, it's happening," and
Yeah,
that's when we kinda hung out the Wild Shingle to say, "Okay, well, here's a place that you can come land
cool.
and hang out with a community of like-minded folks that are coming at it from a perspective of food and
Yeah.
adventure and connection with the outdoors," and
And so what was EatWild's initial offerings, and then it's evolved quite a bit over the last decade and a bit, to what you have now, but initially, what was the vision?
well, there's the initial thing that happened was a friend of mine bought a ranch on the Bonaparte Plateau called Singing Lands Ranch. My good friend Aaron Kendall. And when I was up there visiting, we were sitting in a canoe, paddling around a lake next to her property, and I said, wouldn't it be fun if I brought a bunch of people up here to learn how to hunt? And she's like, let's do it. And I'm like, great. She's
Oh,
like,
nice, yeah.
she's an old camp cook. She'd been a
Oh,
camp
cool.
cook
Yeah.
in tree planting camp. She was like, I'll cook. You bring your people up here. We'll run around the property, talk about hunting, figure out a curriculum.
Man, isn't that nice when you find like-minded people and it all just aligns and you throw out an idea and they say yes? Like, I
Totally.
love I love yes people. I try and surround
Totally.
myself with yes people all the
Yeah.
time, but when somebody has that same, like, no boundaries, no barriers, we'll figure out the details. Yes, I like this idea. Let's just do it.
Absolutely. I like yes people as well. That's
Yeah.
great. Well, yeah, well, and we're gonna get to know each other because you're gonna come and hang out at what is now, I don't know, 12 years later, the Hunter Field Skills Workshop, and you're gonna come and be
Yeah.
part of it. So it's gonna be really
Yeah.
cool.
So maybe talk a little bit about what Eat Wild offers now, because that was sort of the origins of it, and I'm assuming that went forward. You guys did have a group of people come out to Aaron's property?
Yeah, yeah. This is kind of a fun story attached to it because so I sort of built the curriculum. I wrote a little book and built the curriculum and I put it out on Facebook and it sold out instantly with
Oh, wow.
friends of friends. Like there's people like
Yeah.
hearing about it and do it. So I had 12 people or something, which we figured we'd do. And I brought in my hunting mentors, like my hunting mentor Jeff, who's I don't know 70 something now, and I don't know who was the other. It was Larry or anyways. I brought in my hunting mentor
I thought
crew.
you just made up those names earlier. These are actual dudes.
Yeah, dudes. Yeah, Jeff and
Nice.
Larry. Yeah, they're the guys I've been hunting with for 35 years. So,
Cool.
anyway, so they come. They're gonna come and help me with this. So they're gonna share this knowledge and mentorship, which is the big gap, right? So I
Yeah.
kind of just like sit these guys around the fire, wind them up. They tell stories. I deliver this programming in and around it, some structured learning. Um, Anyway, so before the first workshop, so I've got all these like concepts of learning modules sort of scripted out and a bit of an agenda that I'm going to run these 12 people through. And of course, I'm super nervous as I'm leading into this. So it's
Yeah.
the night before, everybody's arrived there the night before. They sat around the fire, had a dinner. We're all going to get together at 8 o'clock in the morning, coffee, and then we're going to kick off this curriculum. And
Yeah.
of course, I can't sleep. So I wake up at like 5 and I'm tossing and turning and stress.
Yeah.
And
Just
so,
wired.
yeah, so I'm like, well, whatever. I'll grab my gun and I go for a walk on the property. So I go for a walk on the property and I go a little loop. There's a couple spots I've been watching that are pretty deery. And I loop back across this sort of deery spot, and sure enough, there's a spike buck standing like
Oh,
in the
wow.
perfect spot.
Yeah.
So I shoot it, it hits the deck. I'm like, oh, thank God, great.
Yeah.
And I look at my
You
watch.
wouldn't want to be the guy who's running a hunting course and then doesn't shoot the deer. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, there's that. I'm good at missing too. So I look at my watch. It's 8:01. I'm like, oh shit, I got to get back. So I run back down to the lodge and I burst in the front door. Now it's like 7 or 8 minutes later, and there's these 12 people all staring at me going, God, the guy's late for his first lesson, and
Yeah.
what the hell are we doing here? We took a flyer on this guy, and he's just like
Yeah.
he hasn't made an appearance yet. And I'm like, hey everybody, welcome to the EatWild workshop. Grab your coffees and your
Yeah.
knife. We're going up the hill. We got a deer to deal with.
Wow. That's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's a bang up start for sure.
Yeah, totally. So that was great because it actually set the agenda from there on out. We had this steer to process and everything
Mm.
else fell into place. So, and then we kind of built you know, a program that was replicable from there that we could do without necessarily shooting a deer at
Yeah.
8 a.m. on the
Yeah.
beginning of the workshop.
On the
But
opening day, that kind of sets a high precedent if that's what you have to do every time.
totally, yeah, totally. But yeah, nonetheless, it was a really good format. So we're still doing that, and here we are, 12 years later. You're going to come up and hang out, and we're going to do
Yeah.
our workshop. It's just gotten better. We just have, we partnered with my friend Jody Peck, who's an amazing wild chef, and so she's going to come and cook for us. We've moved. Unfortunately, our original ranch, Singing Lands Ranch, burnt down. So in one
Oh,
of the fires, so it's no longer the same facility. So we've
geez.
temporarily moved to another friend's ranch, who happened to be one of the workshoppers at that first workshop I just described
Oh,
as their
cool.
first connection to hunting. They were your
Oh, full circle.
original, like,
Yeah.
yeah, OG Eat Wild. There's like a couple of
Yeah.
nonprofit workers downtown East Side,
Cool.
working in the nonprofit sector down on the East Side, came out to that workshop as a way to connect to their food, became hunters, bought
Neat.
a ranch, and now are hosting the future
Wow,
workshop.
that gives me goosebumps. That's like an OG original supporters coming full circle to be able to support other people doing that same thing. It sounds like they obviously took a lot from that if they shifted their entire lifestyle from city to farm.
Well, I think people already wanna do it, right? They're just looking for a way to do it, and if you can
Yeah.
kinda lift people up a little bit and give them a foundation to then explore the next step, then
Yeah.
that's the big part of what we're trying to do, is just remove some barriers and make people feel comfortable and give us some community around it too, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, okay, so that's one workshop that you guys run. So what does Eat Wild offer to the community now? Because you guys have evolved into
yeah.
several more fields or avenues.
Yeah, for sure. Like, we're a bit limited in terms of what we can do because of, as I mentioned, I'm still working. I still have my priority is my full-time career with
Yeah.
parks, and so we just kind of come up with, cool projects that we like doing on the side. But there's been lots of them. We look back, like we just posted our Eat Wild by the Sea
Yeah, I saw that.
workshop, and yeah, it's going to be pretty fun this spring. And we've got one of the most beautiful places in the world to go hang out at. We're going to
Mm,
go show people how to pick oysters and clams and pull prawn traps and then take them back to
cool.
it's actually my sister-in-law's homestead in Jervis Inlet, and we're going to
Nice.
have a lawn table dinner in this beautiful remote place, and then take people back to the mainland, and they can, yeah, but just a really amazing experience. We'll bring in professional chefs to do the cooking, and we'll show people everything you'd want to know about how to harvest shellfish and how to process
Mm,
it and how to store it, and then ultimately how to eat it.
Yeah.
Very needed. So
Yeah. Very
we fun.
important part. Yeah.
Yeah, very important. That's fun, but yeah, that's kind of one end of the spectrum for sure. Like some of these like foodie events, we've done some cooking workshops in Vancouver. We do a monthly butchering workshop in Vancouver, which has been a lot of fun. We just teach people
Yeah.
how to, that moment when you walk up to an animal and you will experience this when you walk up to an animal. You're like, oh
Fingers
my
crossed.
goodness, what have I done? I don't
Yeah.
want. I want to make sure I treat this animal with
Yeah.
complete and total respect
Yeah.
and want to
And
make
not
sure that
waste anything.
not
Yeah.
waste a thing, and so we're gonna show you how to do that and how to remove that barrier and feel good about the process and feel confident
Cool.
going into that.
Yeah.
Um, and then I guess what else? We were doing, spent a lot of time since COVID building online learning
Mm.
content, which I
Yeah, I
didn't
was
think.
gonna say if people can't access, say, a physical bow hunting or field hunting or ocean um,
Yeah.
harvesting workshop, they can also access through you guys through online resources.
Yeah, so we did a pile of, like, YouTube courses in early days of YouTube, and early days of YouTube, early days of EatWild, but it was also kinda early days of how-to stuff on YouTube and
Mhm.
built a bunch of stuff there that kinda gave us a bit of a lift, and we're still doing a little bit of that for sure where we can find time, but really where I'm focusing is kind of these long format conversations with learners through the online courses, so it's kind of
Mm.
a, you know, if you wanna learn about a subject, and I don't mind talking about stuff, as you can tell,
Yeah.
but yeah, built into a long conversation, with slides and video and just my
Mm.
process for,
Cool.
how to hunt elk or how to hunt deer or how to still
Yeah.
hunt. Meat care in the field is another one. E-scouting is a big one that's,
Yeah.
people are super interested in. And
Yeah.
just, if you wanna know how to do it, you can spend $20 and, I'll talk at you for 6 hours or
Yeah.
something.
Well, and you also, speaking of talking at, you also have the Eat Wild podcast where you do those long form interviews with people on these different topics. So people can hear not only from you, but from other people in the field as well who might have different tactics or techniques and stuff that they're
Yeah.
doing.
And that's what we've done with that online learning program because I do enjoy those conversations so much, and I know that you're probably realizing that, "Hey, this is a great way to have conversations with people."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I've taken that and kind of invited some of those experts back, and we just do a slideshow together, and we
Mm.
have a conversation, record it over a slideshow, talk, and then build that sort of structured learning in the conversation and record it, and then edit it, and then share that back out as an online course. So it's sort of a mock online course, mock podcast episode,
Yeah.
and but yeah, you're getting the best of like some of the what I think are the best hunters in BC
Yeah.
talking about their approaches to hunting. So I figure it's got some value in there for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And so with Eat Wild, and maybe this has changed over time, but who's the audience? Like who are you seeing coming to the hunting community as a demographic, maybe age-wise or gender-wise, or like where are you seeing that shift in community?
Um, I really wish we could have tracked that. I would love to have like an actual statistical answer for you.
Mm,
Um, but
generic.
yeah, but yeah, but like uh, anecdotally for sure. Like I think I'm always a little bit shocked when I walk into a room and there's no women. I'm like, oh, this sucks. Like, what happened here? Like,
Mm,
we missed
yeah,
the bar. So there's like, typically we run at 20 or 30% female participation in our workshops. What I
yeah.
do find is that women are more likely to invest in learning. So some of our higher price tag learning, we see a higher percentage of women participating, which means that women are smarter and they recognize the importance of investing in learning
They're like,
resources.
I can just skip a whole bunch of the like hard knock school of life learning and just go straight to the goods.
Yeah, well, and men are just like, "Oh, I don't have to listen to Dylan. I'll just go do it. I'll figure
And
it
I'll do
out."
it myself.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, yeah, totally." But you might, yeah. So
Gotcha.
I just think like you wouldn't go backcountry skiing without taking a avalanche course, and there's just like so
Yeah.
much value in it just to learn how to be in the backcountry in the snow
Yeah.
environment, let alone being safer around avalanches. Like
Yeah.
it's such an it's the hardest. It's the hardest thing to do. Like hunting is by far the hardest thing to learn how to
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
and
One of the
yet
most difficult things I've ever tried.
yeah, like, and it doesn't get any easier ever, like, it just gets hard like, it's just super hard. So, like, why not invest in some learning, yet there's no you get the core class, which is, like, hopelessly inadequate to
Yeah.
support anybody to become a hunter, and then
Yeah.
there you are, right? So
Yeah. It's kind of like almost every piece of education I've ever received in life, you get like this foundational, almost historical knowledge, but none of the practical knowledge that you actually need to execute on whatever sport, task, job, career thing that you're trying to do. There's such a disconnect between what you learn in a classroom and then what you actually need to know on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, it's there's a huge gap. And I mean, and there's also like as I'm going down these avenues of like, oh, I'm gonna teach people how to still hunt. And I get these little ideas around what I think people need to know, but there's still like these huge areas of hunting that I just don't do or not interested in or haven't
Mhm.
developed an experience like just like
Yeah.
waterfowl hunting, for example. Like there's such amazing opportunities in the waterfowl hunting world,
Yeah.
yet I'm not really a waterfowl hunter, right? So,
Yeah.
if there's so much more and that's a whole learning thing and it's one that I've, been, yeah, I've gone down that road a couple times. I love it, but it's
Yeah.
man,
I'm
it's a ton of
definitely
work.
interested in it. My friend Lee, he chairs up the BHA Backcountry Hunters and Anglers in Region 2, and he's always posting stuff about waterfowl hunting and being out there. And um, y- part of it for me here in the Okanagan is that we're limited on lakes where you can find ducks or water bodies of water where you can find fowl that are going to be in huntable areas and not within a city limit type thing.
Yeah,
So I think location plays a big part in driving
hugely.
that interest for some people.
Yeah, for sure, hugely, and you take advantage of what's available to you and develop an expertise in those areas, which is
Mhm.
kind of what I've, I learned how to, I learned how to whitetail hunt, so that's what I do. I do that really well, and I learned how to elk hunt, and I do that well, and
Yeah.
but there's, I'm not, yeah, I'm not a waterfowl hunter, and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, you
there's
mentioned that you were chasing quail in the Okanagan when you were a kid. So, did you grow up in the Okanagan, or where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Vancouver. We
Yeah,
had
okay.
family
You said that.
friends in around Oliver, and
Mm.
we would go and visit them, at least for a week or two in the summer, if not a couple times. And so always maintained a connection there. And I still hunt, in the anywhere. The Okanagan. Well, my wife and I go to the Okanagan pretty regularly just to go enjoy the wineries, and we'll bring our
Yeah.
guns and hunt as well. So
Bring your guns with you, not to the wineries, not
not
to
to the
the wineries,
wineries,
but
but there's always
go
like
with
there's
you to the
hunting. Yeah,
Okanagan.
just
Yeah.
just on the way to and from the Okanagan, we'll yeah, stop in a winery and yeah.
Yeah, there's some great hunting between the Okanagan and the Lower Mainland. So yeah, I was just remembered you saying that, and then I thought, was there a period of time where you were here? But because chasing quail is, I mean, those are itty bitty little guys. It's not a lot of meat on those.
Easy to miss. Yeah.
Yeah, easy to miss for sure. Um, and so is there a target audience that Eat Wild is trying to reach other than obviously the generic non-hunting population that wants to learn? But do you guys have a focus audience that you're trying to reach out to that if somebody's listening to this podcast and they think, oh, that's me, I'm your target audience and they can reach out further?
We haven't done any strategic marketing in that sense. We actually just did a bit of marketing work with a guy, gonna help us better understand this world a
Mm,
little bit about how do you reach different
yeah.
people. But, by and large, like when I walk into a classroom, like there's gender equity, there's ethnic equity. Maybe that's the wrong word. I should probably brush up, but there's cultural
Oh,
diversity
that's
in
good.
every
Yeah.
classroom, and which is really cool. And it just feels like it's kind of happening, and it's like
Yeah.
it's something that we work on in my parks world as well, like as a park manager, and again, we saw a decrease in park usage as the
Mm,
baby boomers were aging out of, say, being in the backcountry and doing those types of things. Um, and we were all sitting around our parks, meetings going, gosh, we're like losing usage. People are not coming out. How do we
mhm,
connect with new Canadians and families that don't have a connection to camping or hiking? How do we make
mhm.
parks relevant to people?
Yeah.
Well, without even doing anything, like totally, because we're government, we can't do anything very well. We just we do something
We can
sort of
talk
well,
about
but
it though. Yeah.
well, we say, hey, there's a problem. Like, how do we solve the
Yeah.
problem? But we don't have the resources or the ability to really necessarily we're slow to the game. Like we can't.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
not
It's
program.
molasses.
Yeah, we're the government. We have
Yeah.
processes, and we're not proactive necessarily. And but what's crazy is that in that time of like being molasses and slowly moving towards how do we do this, it just happened, and
Mm,
all of a sudden, our parks are super well utilized by I would say a huge cross section of Canadians and new Canadians, and
mhm.
the cultural diversity you would see when going into a Golden Ears or a Cultus Lake or Cypress Provincial Park is incredible. And so
Yeah.
with
Especially the last few years.
Yeah, totally. It's awesome, and I mean, I think it's all, you know what? It's social media, and it's just about the biggest thing is just that people need to see themselves in these places, and if they're
Yeah.
not represented in
Yeah.
these places through photographs, through videos, through
Mhm.
storytelling, then then you don't feel there's a place for you,
Yeah.
and all it takes is somebody going up to, you know, out to Joffrey Lake and stand on a log and take a picture of themselves. They're like, "Hey, I look like that person. I recognize that person. Hey, that person did it. I can do it.
That could be me,
That
yeah.
can be
I
me."
have to say I do my bone to pick with that though, is that some of the really nice, like, secret places get blown up on social media, and then they're no longer secrets, and then everybody and their dog's out there, and you're like, "Damn it, okay, now I have to find a new secret place," which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's always good to keep exploring, but sometimes you gotta go pretty darn far into the backwoods to get away from where the photo takers are gonna be.
Yeah, but you know what? You have the privilege and the ability to
Yeah,
do that, and a
yeah,
lot of folks
totally.
don't. And the
Yeah,
far they like, as far as they can get is, the House on Quest Trail in Vancouver or the Joffrey Lakes Park.
yeah,
It's a fully supported experience, and that's
yeah,
as far as they're going to get. And it's great that they're doing it because you know what? They're
yeah,
connected to parks now. They're connected to
totally.
nature,
Yeah.
and you know what? You and I and others, like, I got to get in a float plane to have the experience that I want to have when I
Oh,
hunt.
I'm not quite there yet.
But,
I can
but
still drive to where I wanna be,
yeah.
but, yeah, it is we are very fortunate to live, especially me in the Okanagan. I can drive 15 minutes and I'm out in the middle of the
Mm.
woods. People living in larger cities or who don't have a vehicle, that's a bit more of a challenge either by access or by distance to be able to even get to those places.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. No, I think we're very fortunate. So I think it's just about flipping it and appreciating it. I mean, I know that there's a lot
Mhm.
of folks who are like, I catch the odd bit of shit for like recruiting new hunters into the space, and people are like,
Eh.
there's enough hunters or whatever. I'm like, yeah, you know what? We're a lot better off to have more diversity and more people hunting,
Mhm.
more voices advocating for
Yep.
this way of life.
Conservation. Yeah.
Yeah, all that. And like, it's just because if it's just a bunch of old aging white dudes, it's just not like nobody
Not
cares
gonna
about you
last very
anymore.
long. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's been really neat to see. I mean, as a new hunter and a new female hunter into the scene in the last 3 years, um, it's been really nice to actually see quite a bit of diversity, in ethnicity and gender in even my sphere here in the Okanagan. I ran into other female hunters in the woods last year or this past season, um, I mean, obviously, we're in the same areas if we're running into each other, so that was not great being, in the same zone and being like, "Oh, shit, somebody's already here." But it was nice to run into people and go, "Oh, hey, wow, another female hunter out here in the woods by themselves." So it's good to see that that's actually happening, and that there is also a youngification happening of the population of hunters, and the interest level is getting younger and younger.
Yeah, totally. With youngification, for sure.
Yeah.
It's great to see. And yeah, and I love that's what I love about the BHA is that they're creating a place for community to build,
Mhm.
with some of those tenets in mind, like diversity and inclusion being
Yeah.
at the forefront, not being welcoming to the conversations with indigenous communities about where we go next,
Mhm.
and some of these complex things that we're going to have to deal with as a community, and we just have to get to a place where we're able to have those conversations and that level of acceptance and understanding.
Yeah,
And
and collaboration. I grew up in a First Nations community, and part of one of my, I guess, goals through chairing Region 8 for backcountry hunters and anglers here is to create that bigger and deeper bond, between First Nations and the non-Indigenous hunting population, because there is so much, I mean, that's a whole different topic, but there's so much historical and political background to those conversations, that uh, myself as a newcomer to the hunting scene, I'm like, why can't we just move forward together? Like maybe there's a little bit of naivety there, but sometimes you need that freshness and not the jadedness to be able to bridge those gaps, I think. Or I'm hoping anyways, that's my goal, is to be able to create more conversations and more community that involves everybody in
where
this
did
region anyways.
where'd you grow up?
I grew up here in the Okanagan. Yeah,
Okay,
so I grew up, participating in a lot of the Kelowna Friendship Society's activities and going to ceremonies every week and hanging out on the res, and, yeah, that was a lot of my childhood, and my upbringing and my youth was in engrossed and totally, um, indoctrinated into First Nations culture and ceremonies.
cool. Well, that's very,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
fortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to have that experience and to really grow up with a groundedness in nature and a respect for nature, which has played a lot into why I wanted to get into hunting as an adult and late onset adult hunter, and having a different perspective of where my food comes from and just that respect for the animals that we are eating and harvesting and using the whole animal, because that's a huge part of First Nations culture, is that you don't waste anything. Anything that can be used is used, from the hide to antlers to organ meat to the actual regular meat that people prefer to have usually. But yeah, no part of an animal goes wasted if it can be used.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So within Eat Wild, I guess one of the things that you mentioned earlier, and I wonder if there's a focus or if there's something you guys are doing with this, is that gap for mentorship. So, for example, myself as a new hunter, I found it really challenging in the first couple of years to find mentorship. I was pretty fortunate to run into people in the woods who then offered to mentor me, so that was lucky on my part. But is that something that Eat Wild is offering or striving to offer, in that gap outside of maybe the selective courses, but is there some sort of network that you know of where new hunters can get a mentor versus just say an education?
Yeah, so on two fronts. I mean, I think the one big win of the Hunter Field Skills Workshop, or the backpack, we do a backpack hunter workshop, teach people how
Oh,
to get to their backpacks and go hunting in the alpine,
nice.
or more recently, our bow hunting workshop. Like,
Mhm,
if you go to any of these, you're going to be surrounded by 10 or 12 other learners that are at the same place in their journey, that value learning, that value the opportunity to connect with other folks. And so
mhm.
that's like a great place to start, because you get to make a friend over 2 or 3
Yeah.
days you're hanging out. And some of those relationships really carry on, and the community, usually every time we do one of these, we have a little Facebook group that comes, or
Mm,
a WhatsApp group that stays connected. And they, it's a way to find those folks to learn how to hunt with.
yeah.
um, but facilitating that outside of a workshop, we do a couple of fundraisers every year. We bring folks together. We do a fundraiser for the BHA here in the Lower Mainland. We do
Mhm.
I do a talk on how to get the most out of the LEH program, the limited entry hunting program.
Mm,
And
nice.
last year, I think we raised 3 or 5 grand for conservation with the BC um, local chapter of the BC BHA.
Nice.
Um, and then, really, like, the way that I see it, where I suggest to people, and what I think the best route forward is to partner with the BHA,
Mhm,
and continue to work with them to, support these folks who are looking for a place to land.
mhm.
And I think early days of BHA in the Lower Mainland, I was pretty involved with the early group of folks, Jenny Lee, Chris Prin,
Yeah.
and
Love Jenny.
folks like, yeah, they're good people. And we were all kind of involved, Mark Robichaux, early on, and kind of was like, oh, this is great. Like, this is like, I think Mark brought it to the Lower Mainland. And we were able to kind of jump in and kind of set a, bit of a terms of reference for our group, and kind of set the
Cool.
context. And there was some great folks that came out early on and kind of established that culture. Um and now Lee is involved in taking over that
Mhm.
group. And I think it's just that, to me, that's the coolest place. And I think that
Yeah.
trying to connect people back to BHA, we have the podcast is sponsored by the
Mhm.
BHA. And that's the consistent message. It's like, hey, if you want to meet people, go out to a BHA event,
Yeah.
and like, go out and have a beer with some folks, get involved in a conservation project. That's
Mhm.
how you're going to meet folks. And I think
Yeah.
that's the, like, I love that ability, because there really is no, like, it's not, I can't say that the BC Wildlife Federation is the place to send young, ambitious young hunters. I just don't feel like they're at a place where they just don't have that open door to something like that. Whereas,
Yeah. If
like,
you're really hardcore into conservation and policy and that type of stuff, BCWF is for sure the place to go. If you're looking more for community and mentorship and those connections at a local level, definitely BHA is, that's something that we strive for, is to have that community feel and aspect. And one of the amazing things that I've discovered in chairing for our region here in Region 8 is that, yeah, there are a ton of um, seasoned hunters. I won't say older, because some of them aren't really that old. They've just been hunting since they were kids, but seasoned hunters who are more than willing to share their stories if given a platform and a space to do so, and to be able to mentor new people who are getting into the field. So yeah, that's a great point to bring back to, is BHA is for sure a spot to connect from new person to a more experienced person for sure.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's been fun, and I really I commend the efforts. Like, code was tough on BHA and a lot of volunteer groups, and trying to
Yeah.
build back from that. That's a tough place, and yeah, I'm looking forward to reconnecting with the crew that are bringing it back here in at least in our region 2, and it
Yeah.
sounds like you guys are doing well in region 8, and hopefully I'll get out to an event when I'm passing through. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that would be awesome. We'll aim to make something happen there because I think the information that you have at Eat Wild and the courses and the education, that part we don't focus so much on with BHA. We're more about that community and some conservation and policy work and supporting BCWF on their bigger voice and that sort of thing. But the education component and aspect, I think, would be amazing, and that's why there's such a good synergy between Eat Wild and BHA and having those cross sponsorships and stuff is it's they're both focusing on the same things of community, filling that gap between people who know nothing and people who know a lot of things and getting that transfer of knowledge from, like you said, a bunch of people are probably going to maybe pass on or wander away from the hunting sphere, and being able to make sure that information isn't lost and gets transferred to the next generation of hunters.
yeah, for sure. No, I
Yeah.
think it's important. And it's fun. It's fun too because
Yeah.
it's something I talk about a little bit too. Like, there's hunting is a really cool place because it allows for cross generational relationships,
Hmm.
and there's not a lot of places that you could really form a friendship with someone who is 20, 30, or 40 years older than you,
Or
and have
70. Yeah.
or 70, yeah, and have a genuine connection, and both bring so much to the relationship.
Yeah.
And obviously elders and mentors provide knowledge, and then the younger folks provide spirit and hard work and keenness that keeps folks going. But
Mhm.
we had we celebrated Larry's, was it 70th, 80th,
Wow.
70th whitetail hunt this year.
70th whitetail hunt.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So
That's
he shot a
crazy.
whitetail deer, or I think, yeah, he shot a whitetail deer every year for the past 7 years.
That's
And
amazing.
maybe it's a deer. I don't know if it's a whitetail deer or a deer, but he's harvested a deer every year for the past
Yeah.
7 years, and his first whitetail camp was when he was 12 or something like that. And I think it might even,
Wow.
anyways, maybe it's the 75th. Regardless, anyways, we had a bit of a party
Long
out at
time.
whitetail camp this year, and we invited, and so where we hunt, it's not a secret spot by any means, but I'll keep it as secret as I can.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's a number of other hunters that, friends of mine and other folks that are relations that are were hunting in and around within an hour's drive of the valley. So I invited everybody to dinner,
Cool.
and I think we had about 30 people in camp, and we served
Wow.
dinner for 30 people, and then we sat around the campfire, and we talked about yeah, we shared stories about how much every one of us had been impacted by Larry's mentorship
Mm,
and
that's cool.
knowledge and community, and basically just had an opportunity to say thank you to him for, being a he actually won there was the Barnsby Award, I believe it is. It's a conservation
Oh,
award from the BC
cool.
Wildlife Federation. He got that a couple of years ago, and was from his lifetime of conservation work. And
Wow.
yeah, and just but more so, he's just like, anytime he meets somebody that's keen to hunt, he's got time for them and shares his knowledge, and
Yeah,
he inspires
that's
people,
amazing.
and so yeah, it was a beautiful moment. So really cool to see it. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's really cool, and it's really amazing that you guys took the time to honor him for that because I think a lot of people in this community, so far I've met mostly, knock on wood, really amazing people that are willing to share their knowledge. Of course, there's always going to be people who want to kind of keep things close to their chest and hold that exclusive club, but the people that are willing to share are amazing, and they should be honored for that because I think they do a lot of it they just do thanklessly. They see somebody that's new, they want to help, they offer information, and often they never get even a thank you for that. But yeah, that's amazing. You guys took the time to celebrate him with a 30 person wild dinner.
yeah, sitting around the campfire, it was pretty special for sure.
Yeah. And so for Eat Wild for 2024, what is the vision moving forward into the future?
It's a good question. We just did a big lift on our sort of our website platform, which is just kind of getting things a little more automated, a little easier for us to connect with people, and get
Hmm.
people into our courses and stay connected. So hopefully that'll sort of allow us to step back and focus on some project stuff. Um, I'm a big, you know, the one thing I actually want to do, which I want to do a podcast specifically on the seasons of eating wild with my friend Jody, and hopefully my friend
Mm,
Spencer. So Spencer's Shimshin as an indigenous perspective, obviously from
yeah.
his seasons of eating wild through the lens of an indigenous person. Jody is from
Oh,
the north, and she's a wild chef, and then of course myself. And it'd be fun to just set out a project of doing a 8-part episode or something like that on
yeah.
eating wild food, and that'd be kind of fun. But that's,
That would be
like,
amazing.
be fun, but it's also like, yeah, it's just the time is always, I'm always aware, like, overcommitting
Yeah.
time. Um, yeah, but,
But it
look
can
at the
happen over time, right? It doesn't have to be fast. Cool projects like that are often better when they're spaced out and there's time for to absorb and to create the vision that you have. So that would be amazing.
yeah, and I think I do it a bit different, like we just do, kind of build the 8 parts or something like that, but not necessarily, like, do them all sort of over the course of a time period, and not necessarily
Mhm.
have to, like, get together every month and bang something out. Just kinda figure maybe to do a different format. I've learned a lot about
Yeah.
this podcasting, and I think I would
Yeah.
do it differently if I did it all over again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned "we" a few times. So Eat Wild is not just you. Who is the "we" behind it?
Well, first and foremost is my wife, Mickey, who's, always dealing with the a lot of the coordination and
Yeah.
programming and getting things together to make it actually all work out. And so she might be the person that connects with you via email, and she'll also be
Mhm.
the person who's, you know, putting everything together and loading the truck with me and showing up at events and welcoming
Mhm.
people. And always, and she's also a hunter, and also, someone that really loves being part of these events and cooking, and does a tremendous amount of work to support
Yeah.
Eat Wild. And um,
Yeah,
so
you guys
that's
are a powerhouse team for sure.
yes. And then of course we have an awesome team. So we have Rob Wilson, who leads a lot of our firearms and a lot of field mentoring stuff, whether it's our backpack hunter workshop or field workshop. And of course Jody Peck is another huge part of our team, and she's our wild chef. And Selena is our naturalist and, biologist and enthusiast about all things, butchering and such of
Mm,
animals. So we have an awesome team. And of course
yeah.
Martine has come back. She was off for a couple years, and she's back now leading courses and
Cool.
in Kamloops, and is doing awesome. So
Yeah.
yeah, we've got a great team, and great to have some, yeah, good folks that are, everybody works like full-time professional jobs and just
Yeah, and
likes to
then
do
has
this
this
stuff.
passion. Yeah.
Yeah, and it gives us all a place to get together, and we have these, like, big events that are super hard to pull together, and then everybody leaves, and we're like, "Oh my god, that was so hard, but that was fun, right? We'll do it
Yeah,
again."
we'll do it again. Yeah, give
Yeah.
it like it's like they say with children, right? Like after you have a kid, they're like, "Oh, never again," because it was so much work and so painful. And then you give it like 2, 3, 4, 5 months, and you're like, "Ah, that wasn't so
So
bad.
bad?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I'll do that
totally.
again."
Let's do another cooking workshop, that was so
Yeah,
fun. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. You forget about all the painful parts because the good
No,
parts are so amazing.
well, it is amazing. I mean, what else are you gonna do with your time? I mean, you gotta do
Yeah,
something, and connecting with people and sharing this way of life with people is
yeah,
pretty darn fun.
yeah.
And it
Giving back
ha
and service to others is very, very fulfilling.
Yeah, and it has an impact on people. Like, there's
Yeah.
these cool notes you get once in a while that, just yeah, you just feel very lucky.
Well, look at this the story of the people who came to your very, very first ever one and eventually changed their whole lifestyle, and now you're hosting, your field workshop at their ranch. Like, that's a pretty cool impact to be able to have on somebody's life. Even if, you weren't maybe the reason, but you were a catalyst, you were a trigger, there was something in there that sparked for them that went, "Okay, yeah, this is big enough that we're gonna change our lifestyle."
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories of connection that is, so Larry, who I've told you about,
Mhm.
86 or 87 years old this year. So I've had him on a couple of my, over COVID. I would invite him out to come join me on these Eat Wild webinar series for
Mm,
just talking about hunting. And I get Larry on to talk about mule deer hunting or sharing his knowledge in one capacity or another. And I'd interview him, and then we'd have this audience of folks, right? So we have
mhm,
like 60 people in our Zoom audience, and I'm talking about mule deer hunting with Larry, and pulling stories out of him and having tons of fun. And it's a great way to connect. And over those long COVID nights, it was a very popular activity while we were doing it.
mhm,
And at the end of the workshop, there's one guy named Dylan who was hanging around, like virtually hanging around, and he's like, "Hey, I just wanted to ask, Larry something." And he says, "Larry, are you from Langley?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm from Langley." He said, Did you ever hunt with a guy named Al?" And he's like, "Oh, Al, yeah, Al, he's an old he's a great guy. Oh, I love Al. Yeah, he's passed on now, but he was such a good hunter. Oh, I love that guy." He's like, "Well, Al's my grandfather, and
Oh, wow.
I've just come to wanna learn how to hunt, and my dad never hunted, but he said that all my dad could tell me when I was trying to get into hunting, he says, 'Oh, it's too bad Al's gone, but if Al was there Al's old friend Larry, if you could find
Oh,
Larry
nice.
from Langley, he's a really good guy and he knows a lot about hunting. If you can find him, you should you'd be, that's a good place to start.'"
Yeah.
And then here he is on a Zoom call
On a Zoom call.
of
Yeah.
all places. He
Wow,
connects with
yeah.
Larry.
It's just yeah, it's amazing the synchronicities, and it's not it's a small community once you're in it. Everybody knows everybody who knows somebody who's 1 degree away from this person or that person. So, yeah, that's pretty neat for that to come all the way around for him to be like, "Are you Larry from Langley?" Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a highlight. So that fireside chat of the 30 people around the fire celebrating Larry, Dylan was there and Dylan got to
Oh,
tell
cool.
that story in front of everybody. And it was
Nice.
like, oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Bring some tears out.
pretty magical. Yeah. Pretty
Yeah.
magical. Cause I mean, that's pretty cool. And it's,
Yeah.
and Larry and Dylan are hunting partners now.
Oh, cool.
Like it's great for both of them, and it's
Yeah.
such a great connection for Dylan to have to, a grandfather he never got to hunt with, and
Aw.
it recharges Larry's batteries to have someone who's fired up and keeps Larry
Yeah.
young, and yeah, so pretty cool thing.
Yeah, that's cool. I've become a very large fan of um hunting camps and deer camps and bonfire gatherings like that because there's so many cool stories and so much knowledge that gets passed around. So, even in my seasons so far where I haven't harvested any large animals, at least you get to hear stories from other people who have done it. So it makes it worthwhile in the interim.
Yeah, for sure. No,
Yeah.
it's definitely a special part of the hunting program for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I've got some last minute rapid fire questions that I need to ask you. Um,
Of course.
so, first, before that, a standing wrap up question that I always ask is what would be your 1 minute or less recommendation to new hunters? That one thing that you wish somebody had told you when you were first starting out?
I think invest in the iHunter app. And
Mm,
um, full disclosure, they support me a little bit on the podcast to talk
yeah.
about their stuff, but I genuinely, the reason why is because I feel so strongly about having that platform. It just knowing where private land boundaries are, knowing how
Hmm.
to having that tool in your pocket that can help navigate, having a tool that you can document your hunts and the places that you found that are like notable spots where deer were hanging around, or maybe where you
Yeah.
killed a deer or where a deer trail is, and you mark that all in your iHunter app, and it catalogs all that for you and holds on to that information. But it's just a really powerful tool to stay, to plan, to scout, and then to track your hunts and ultimately get back to the truck, without getting lost. That's like, it's
Very
such a
important.
powerful
Yeah.
tool. So like over the years, I built a whole different set of skills to navigate the woods, which is super important with maps and compasses, but really like it all comes together with that app and really
Hmm.
gets you in a gets you at a good start. So I'd
Yeah.
start there, but it's, when I say invest in the app, I don't just mean invest the $10 a year. I mean invest in learning how to use the app
Yeah.
and applying it and developing expertise and skill and learning it. I'd
Yeah.
also make sure you know how to use a compass, because I would never suggest, what I should say is put a compass in your pocket on a little string,
Yeah.
know how that works, and
Yeah.
then invest in the iHunter app. And
Yeah.
that's the good place to start.
Yeah, I need a compass workshop here in the Okanagan because I have a compass, but gosh darn, if I were lost in the forest, I don't know that I could use it to get out. So
Well,
that's
you know what?
something.
You'll get you'll get it at the hunter workshop. So you can
Nice,
jump in for the how to use a compass piece for sure.
perfect, good, good. Okay, and so rapid fire questions. You get like 1 or 2 words per answer. So, what was the first animal you ever harvested?
Uh, whitetail deer.
Whitetail deer. Okay. What's your favorite hunting resource? Whether that's a podcast, book, a forum, maybe an app. You can't say iHunter again, so pick a different one.
Oh yeah, it's easy. The Val Geist collection of books on the different species of ungulates.
Okay, cool.
Dr. Val Geist. He's a biologist that was a really good writer.
Nice.
He
Awesome.
passed away
I'm gonna
last
check
year.
that out. What is one thing you should never do as a hunter in the woods?
Oh God, there's so many things you should never do.
Okay, you can give your top two.
Gosh. Okay. Well, I think the first thing is just like really respecting uh people's knowledge. So if someone like
You should
if so,
respect people's knowledge.
yeah, you should
Yeah.
respect people's
Okay.
knowledge. So don't go if someone takes you hunting somewhere and says, "This is my secret spot. I'm going to show you how to hunt." Don't go back there without permission. Like don't hunt
Mm,
someone's secret spot without permission. I think that's kind of a
yeah.
shitty thing to do.
Yeah.
Um uh I think the other thing is just, having when you commit to taking the shot, knowing that you have the confidence and the skills to make the shot.
Yeah.
And and I'm not saying that I make bad decisions still about my shooting, and I'm not suggesting it's something that is 100%, but I think that
Never. Yeah.
being confident with your shooting and knowing what you're capable of and what the bullet's capable of doing is and the rifle is extremely important, and
Yeah.
being
Don't take
responsible
a
around
bad
that.
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your favorite hunting snack?
Oh, that's easy. J, N, and Z sausage. So commercial drive first and commercial. Yeah. So
Very
Zoki,
specific.
Zoki and Natasha make the absolutely best uh, sausage. It's an Eastern European sausage, and it's super dry. So what's amazing
Mm,
about it is you can throw it in your backpack, and it can just like kick around your backpack, and you don't have to does not stay refrigerated. So I
mm.
probably still have a couple of like half pieces of sausage in my hunting bag, which I haven't hunted for 2 or 3 weeks now. And I can, if I feel snacky, I can go up there and grab it and
Go
cut a
find them.
couple pieces off and eat it.
It's my emergency food. I leave it in my hunting pack just in
Yeah,
case.
it's
In the dead
unreal.
of
So yeah,
winter, I run out of
yeah,
food. Yeah.
yeah. JN and Z on Commercial Drive. It's the best sausage in the world.
Nice. Um, do you wear a double layer of socks or one layer of socks when you hunt?
There's something called the right socks, which are actually a double layered sock all built into one. So they avoid,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I got into them I'm a backcountry skier. So
Mm.
back in the day, just, yeah, really reduces blistering,
Yeah,
hot spots.
critical. Yeah, I learned that not in hunting, thankfully. The very first time I ever did a multi-day backpacking hike, I wore proper socks for the first 5 days, and then on the last day, I'm like, "Oh, nice pair of clean cotton socks." Put those on for the hike out. Yeah, I had blisters, like nobody's business
No,
on the last day when
bad
we got
time.
back to the car. So thankfully, I didn't do that on day one, but I learned the value of a good pair of socks. Do you have a lucky item that you take hunting with you?
Hmm. I've got one of I had uh, an indigenous youth from I want to say his territory, but it's slipping my mind. Mi'kmaq, I think. And I might be wrong, but young guy lost connection to his indigenous heritage, and he came to an EatWild workshop, and he wanted to hunt, and he was came in. We had a great 3-day workshop, and really connected over the workshop. And he actually made a couple connections at the workshop, went on hunting, and then he kept on his journey to reconnect with his heritage, and
Mm.
he grown some tobacco as part of that process, and he came back to me, gave me a little satchel of tobacco, and knocked on my door, and he's a fan, and it's like, here, I wanted to give this to you,
Oh,
um,
wow.
and so I bring that around with me, and I take a little bit out, and after I kill an animal and provide as an offering,
Yeah.
but it was really, yeah, really cool. Yeah, it was powerful for sure. So that's kind of
Yeah.
packed that around, and it's been lucky ever since. So
That's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah, that's very cool. Um, what is the one absolute essential item that you have to have on every hunt? If you couldn't forget it, it's the most critical piece. What is that one thing?
My binoculars.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. Like, the
Yeah.
first thing I wouldn't I'd rather go hunting without a gun than without my binoculars. It's about as
Yeah.
useful. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So if people want to reach you, we will drop links to the eWild website and some contact information down below when this podcast is released. And thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, you're gonna have to come on the Wild podcast because I've got a bunch of questions for you. I'd like to know, yeah, a whole
Yeah.
bunch of things. So I'm really curious about your journey. So we'll make that happen. But we're gonna get to know each other here in the spring at the hunter workshop and the bow hunting
Hmm.
workshop, and it'll be a fun hang. I think you're gonna really enjoy the community and the program. So that'll be a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
I'm
So
very excited. And if people want to check out other workshops that are coming up in 2024, it'll be in the link down below with
perfect.
the website and all of that information there. So thank you so very much, Dylan, and we will talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in today to watch or listen, and make sure to hit that like or subscribe button to follow along wherever you get your podcasts. If you have any questions, comments, or reviews, please drop them down below. I will read them and I will get back to you. Or you can reach me at questions@entrypointhunting.com. If you know an expert or someone who offers great advice or is just growing rapidly in the field of hunting, angling, or conservation, please send them my way. I would love to reach out and connect with them. And until next time, friends, stay hungry.